Rock that boogie, get your rocking shoes, we gonna rock and roll. Come on, cats, let's go, go, go. Hola, chica.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of El Pachuco Chronicles. My name is Jim Ruel, and we have three hosts today. Myself, Ray, and Vanessa are both here.
Hello, my name is Vanessa Estrella. Nice to have Jim back. I miss him doing the opening and bringing up all the questions that I forget. And who else do we have here?
Hola, it's Vanessa. ¿Cómo están todos?
And who else is our mystery guest?
My name is Jorge Hernandez. I'm from Riverside, California.
And tell us a little bit about what you do. And what nickname do you go by?
Well, my placa is Mr. Blue. I've had that placa since I was in high school. So I've used that nickname, Mr. Blue, my entire life.
How did you get Mr. Blue? Were you a little depressed?
No. So when I was growing up, I always wore the color blue. And so people just started calling me Mr. Blue. The reality of it is I didn't wear the color blue because it was my favorite color. I only had two pair of pants. Okay. One was a pair of brown khakis, and the other was a pair of blue khakis. And I had to alternate every other day.
Wow.
So it always appeared that I was wearing the color blue, but it wasn't because it was my favorite color. It was because I only had two pair of pants.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's a nice story.
So there is a song by the Fleetwoods called Call Me Mr. Blue. And then so that the color blue and the song by the Fleetwoods was the way that I got that moniker as Mr. Blue.
Very interesting story. I would have never thought. I thought he was radio talent and just, yeah.
No, it was economics.
Okay. Yeah. And tell us a little bit more about you. What else? I know you got your hand in a lot of things.
Well, by trade and by employment, I'm a Superior Court judge. I've been a Superior Court judge now since 2008. Prior to that, I was a criminal defense attorney for 20 years. So the way I pay the bills is by law, in the legal trade. But I've been doing a lot of things since high school. I've been an organizer. I have been an organizer ever since, I believe, the 10th grade when I started getting involved in the group called MECHA, Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. And I did that in high school. I did that in college. And in law school, I was with La Raza Law Students Association. And then after law school, I continued on with my organizing efforts. As a lawyer in private practice, I had the ability and the time-wise and the ability financially to be able to do a variety of different things, whether it be sponsoring groups like MECHA, sponsoring the United Farm Workers and their events in Riverside, or organizing my own events. My legal career just allowed me the flexibility to do a variety of different things.
Wow, you've always been a part of El Movimiento.
Ever since the 10th grade, man. Ever since I came to Riverside and joined MECHA.
Well, you seem to love what you do. It seems like you're always, you're into something.
Well, look, my mom always taught me that if you have the ability to help out, then that's what you need to do. My mother always took in strays, and I call them strays because they were people who, for example, there was Yolanda and her two kids, Mickey and Patrick. They ended a relationship, and they were on the streets, and my mom brought them home and took care of them. And we as kids, we never understood, but Mom, why are you bringing people into the house when we don't have enough room for us and we don't have enough food for us? And here you are bringing in people. And so now we've got to make our food stretch even greater than we did before. And now we have to make accommodations for people when we don't even have enough bedroom space for ourselves. So why are you doing that?
How many were there of you in the
house?
Oh,
my mom was raising 7 boys and 1 girl as a single mother.
Wow.
Right?
So you're number?
I'm number 5. I'm 5th in line, 5th from the top. And my mom always said, si tienes que aprovechar, tienes que ayudar, tienes que, you just always have to be available to help those that are in need. And when you're growing up poor with limited food, sometimes it's difficult for you to understand that concept. But, it as you grow up, then, that just becomes what you do. You help. And so I've always helped. Whenever there was a need, I always stepped up in order to fulfill that need.
It was in your blood.
Great story.
Yeah.
Isn't it something the way our mothers have an effect on us?
I think we are the sum total of all of our experiences growing up. So when you are growing up and whatever it is your mother is doing, whatever it is that's happening in the neighborhood among your relatives, that kind of becomes your personality. That kind of becomes who you are. So.
Yeah, exactly. I find myself being more like my mom than my dad every so often. So, what do you think, Jim? You grew up in a big household.
Definitely more like your mom. No, I was kidding. I did. Yeah, I had 5 sisters. I have 5 sisters and a brother, and we would bring home strays, mostly dogs, and my mom would get mad at us. But we always had. It always seemed like when I was younger that we always had people just staying with us.
Well, the concept of extended family
Yes.
is just always a concept that is ingrained in our cultura. You always have your grandmother and your grandfather living with you, and then you have your tios and your tias living with you, or you have your cousins living with you. That concept of extended family is just part of our cultural existence.
It really is, because I too remember always having people staying at our house. Las tías, los tíos.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have a place to live. ¿Dónde van? En la sala.
I had a tío, and his name was Richard. I always thought he was my tío, and it turned out he wasn't my tío. My the oldest sibling of my mom had a son, her firstborn Richard, and then she left him with my grandmother while she went off to go work in different areas. So he was raised in the household, and I always thought he was an uncle, but he wasn't. He was a cousin. And then he had a brother named Esquinky. Esquinky for Esquinkle, right? His name was Franco Robledo. But so when he was a kid growing up, they said, running around como un escuincle. So his name was Esquinkle, and then it became Squinky.
Oh, my God.
But you don't know those things growing
Yeah,
up, right?
the nicknames.
It just after a while, you begin to try to parcel out how that name came to be. Well, I didn't know that Squinky and Richard were brothers.
Oh, wow.
I always thought they were my mom's brothers and not their own siblings. So I thought they were uncles, and they turned out they weren't. But in our cultura, there's always primos and primas and tios and tias that live with us, right?
Yeah, that's usually how it is. Now, I want to move on because people always ask us, who wears your zoot suits? And yo les digo, well, you'd be surprised. We have a judge that wears zoot suits, and they don't believe us. That's why. So he's right here. Se llama Jorge Hernandez. No le digan George, because he doesn't like that. No, se llama Jorge. And so tell us a little bit more about your involvement with El Pachuquismo and our community, and when you started wearing zoot suits.
The image of the Pachuco has always existed in our community. And I remember being in high school, and I always wore pleated pants in high school and long sleeve shirts with the military creases tucked in, and maybe suspenders and maybe not. But I always dressed like that. I have always dressed like that. And I used to go over to Los Angeles. Right on Wilshire Boulevard was a store called Felinos, and they had vintage clothing. So you would be able to buy 50 style pleated pants with the little pocket on the side. The cuffs are a little wider than the traditional zoot suit, but I have always dressed like that. I have always aspired to be that very classy individual with the sleek lines and the pleats and the creases and the shirt. So I have always dressed like that. The very first zoot suit that I bought, I actually bought from carpenters out in Pomona. And it wasn't the classic zoot suit that you folks, sell. It was just a very generic one, but that was my first one. And
How old were you?
Oh, God. I was my first year of college. I was maybe 18, 19 years old. I
Oh,
was
my
in,
God.
I was in Teatro Quinto Sol, and we did a play by Luis Valdez, and it's called Honest Sancho's Used Mexican Lot, right? And so we played the part of the Pachuco, so I got that zoot suit there in the two-tone Stacey Adams, black and white.
Oh,
Stacey's
classics.
been around for like 100 years, so did that. And then when I was a lawyer at UC Riverside, we were going to have our first Pachuco dance. And then that's when I first came to this shop with your mom, Ray's mom, and her father. That was like over 30 years ago now.
Smiling Pachuco.
That I came and I bought my first zoot suit from here. And my body style hasn't really changed much, so I've been able to wear that zoot suit now for 30 years. And then our reintroduction, when we met up again at that social services conference in LA, I met you, and then I met Ray, and then I got reintroduced to Phyllis. And then so I bought my second zoot suit from here when I started organizing the dance as a fundraiser for the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art and Culture. I bought my other zoot suit when I started throwing my Pachuco ball dances in 2018.
Wow.
So
Much history.
I have just always been enamored with that look. It's classy. It's stoic. The symbolism of resistance, the symbolism of resistance to acculturation, the fact that historically, we were the target of abuse, we were the target of violence, we were the targets of attempts to eradicate a culture and a trend, and we have resisted that eradication since 1942 till today's date, and we continue to be strong, and we continue to just encapsulate everything that means. I'm 62 years old now. My first zoot suit was when I was 18, and I have been just entrenched in this style ever since then.
Well, you said you were enamored by the look and the style. How does that make you feel? You just told us what it represents to you, but how does that make you feel when you put on the zoot suit and you think of the past and your history and the history of the zoot suit, the culture? How does that make you feel to wear the zoot suit?
There's that line in the play Zoot Suit by Luis Valdez. It was a fantasy of every vato living in and out of the Pachucada to put on the zoot suit and play the role más Pachuco que la chingada.
Well, it doesn't say más Pachuco. It does say más chucote.
Más chucote, right?
Que la chingada.
So,
Pero
but,
sí, es lo mismo.
But that line really captures.
Sí.
Everybody wants the opportunity to be galán, to be gallant, to put on this next level. So you watch old movies, and in those old movies you see the people with the coats and the tails and the hat.
Top hats.
And that becomes something that culture wants to be. But for us, it was the zoot suit, the fingertip length coat, the tramos, high-waisted, the estirantes and the hat, right? That to us was top notch. That to us was the top of the line. I mean, you couldn't get, and you still can't get any higher than that. You just can't.
You just brought up, different people and different styles. What do you say to people that say that it's culturally inappropriate for other race other than Chicanos or Mexicanos or Latinos to wear the zoot suit?
Well, then they don't know their history, because zoot suit wasn't created by Chicanos. It was created by Negros in Harlem. The guy that gets the most credit, because there were three designers who really did the zoot suits, but there was a guy by the name of Fox, last name Fox. He gets the most credit for it. But it was a Harlem thing, and it was an East Coast thing, and everybody on the East Coast was wearing it. Started out in the black communities, but it filtered out to the Filipino community. It filtered out to the what do you call it? The white community. All the stars were wearing it. Cab Calloway was wearing it. There are early pictures of Frank Sinatra wearing a zoot suit. There's early pictures of Danny Kaye wearing zoot suits. And then it filtered out to the West Coast. And it only became synonymous with Chicanos when we started getting attacked for wearing it. You know, William Randolph Hearst hated Mexicans. He hated Mexico. And he would write opinions, being, you know, in charge of one of the biggest newspapers
LA
on
Times.
the planet, right? He advocated for the United States to finish the job that began in 1846, which was when U.S. invaded Mexico, and as a result of that, you know, one third of Mexico became the U.S. Southwest. He hated us. And he then wanted to create some acrimony between the U.S. and Mexico during the World War II. So he started running sensationalized headlines talking about Mexican crime wave, you know, Mexican hoodlums. And Mexico lodged a complaint with the U.S. and said, we are your allies in this war, and yet you're allowing this guy to run these headlines talking about Mexican hoodlums. So then it switched to Pachuco hoodlums and Pachuco crime wave. And then at that particular point in history, it became solidified that Pachuquismo and zoot suits were the same, which historically it wasn't. And then Pachuco, zoot suit, and Mexicans then became solidified in history as, you know, the purveyors and the users of zoot suit. When historically, we actually came into that picture a hell of a lot later than everyone else.
We still have people that actually comment and say that the Zoot Suit riots were about rationing of clothing because it was during World War II. What do you say about that?
No, it's a combination of a variety of different things. First, there was xenophobia. Xenophobia is the fear of the other, the fear of the unknown, the fear of somebody that is not white, Anglo-Saxon, and Protestant. So when the headlines started coming out of Pachuco crime wave and Pachuco hoodlums and Pachuco gangsters, there really was an attempt to eradicate that style of clothing from the Los Angeles scene, from the California scene. So whenever there is a dislike for something, there's always a law that comes in order to legalize their attempts to eradicate. And that attempt was to talk about shortage, was to talk about, you know, all these other things. So they started saying you are un-American if you are wearing this clothing that is exaggerated and flamboyant. Well, what they didn't really understand is that a whole lot of gente did not have the money to buy zoot suits. So what would they do? They would go to their father's closet and raid the clothes and then use a belt in order to exaggerate the pleats. And then the coats, they're oversized. Think of the movie Zoot Suit and the younger brother of Henry Reina. And his dad says, what are you doing raiding my clothes? Well, that's what most people did. They didn't have the money to buy stylized clothes. They did that. So this attack on the Pachucos, you knew it was fake. You knew it was false because we really didn't have the money to spend on exaggerated clothing. We just raided our jefito's closet and wore that clothes. But historically, there's always been laws that have been used in order to legalize the racism against us. Previously, it was we used to do, you know, cockfighting, right? And then there were laws that said, oh, you can't do cockfighting. And then we used to do bullfighting. And then there were laws that says you can't do